Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that every light is out. Your phone won't turn on. The internet is gone. Cars won't start. Planes are grounded. ATMs are dead. And every city skyline has gone dark. At first, it feels like a temporary blackout. But then, the hours pass. No one knows why. No one knows when power will return. A single question begins to echo across the world. Could humanity actually survive without electricity? The answer is far more frightening and fascinating than most people realize.
Welcome to sleep time. Relax your head, pull up your covers, and rest your mind. Do you think we could survive without electricity? Let me know in the comments. Electricity is so deeply woven into modern life that most of us barely notice it anymore. It quietly powers nearly every moment of our day, from the alarm that wakes us to the refrigerator preserving our food, the traffic lights guiding our commute, and the servers carrying billions of conversations across the globe. Remove it all at once, and civilization doesn't simply slow down, it begins to unravel in ways that are difficult to imagine until they actually happen. In the first few minutes, confusion spreads faster than panic. Millions instinctively reach for their phones, only to find dead networks. Television stations disappear. Radios fall silent unless they're battery-powered. Elevators stop between floors. Trains freeze on their tracks. Across every major city, thousands of people are suddenly stranded, wondering whether this is a local outage or the beginning of something much larger. The roads become dangerous almost immediately. Without traffic lights, intersections transform into chaotic bottlenecks. Electric vehicles stop once their batteries drain. Fuel pumps refuse to operate because they also rely on electricity. Even if gasoline remains underground, there is no simple way to access it. Long lines form at service stations before people realize the pumps themselves are powerless.
Hospitals instantly become the world's most critical locations. Emergency generators roar to life, buying precious hours or days. Doctors continue surgeries beneath backup lighting, while ventilators, dialysis machines, and intensive care equipment remain operational. For now. But backup systems were never designed to power entire healthcare networks indefinitely. Every passing hour becomes a race against dwindling fuel supplies and failing infrastructure.
Meanwhile, another invisible crisis begins inside millions of homes. Refrigerators quietly warm. Freezers slowly thaw. Fresh food starts to spoil. Families initially treat it like an inconvenience, cooking what they can and sharing meals with neighbors. But within days, supermarket shelves empty. Supply trucks aren't arriving, warehouses aren't operating, and replacement food simply isn't coming. Hunger begins with inconvenience before transforming into desperation. Water, something most people assume will always flow from the tap, suddenly becomes uncertain. Modern treatment plants rely heavily on electrically powered pumps and filtration systems. Without them, pressure drops across entire cities. Faucets begin sputtering. Clean drinking water becomes more valuable than money itself. Rivers, lakes, and rainwater suddenly become lifelines, but only if people know how to purify them safely. The digital world vanishes almost overnight. Billions of websites effectively disappear because servers require continuous power and cooling. Cloud storage, online banking, streaming platforms, social media, and search engines fade into silence. Humanity has spent decades moving its memories, businesses, and knowledge into digital spaces. Without electricity, much of that information becomes temporarily unreachable, almost as though it never existed. Financial systems collapse in ways most people never consider. Credit cards stop working. Online accounts become inaccessible. Banks cannot process transactions.
ATMs are useless metal boxes. Even people with significant savings suddenly struggle to buy basic necessities because wealth trapped inside digital systems has no practical value if those systems cannot function. As the first week passes, cities begin revealing a hidden weakness. Modern urban environments depend almost entirely on constant electrical support. Food arrives daily instead of being grown locally. Water is pumped from distant sources. Waste is transported away through powered systems. Without electricity, the very design of modern cities becomes one of humanity's greatest vulnerabilities.
Rural communities experience the crisis differently. Many still possess practical skills that urban populations have gradually lost. Wells can sometimes be operated manually. Firewood replaces electric heating. Gardens provide supplemental food. Livestock continues producing milk and eggs. While life becomes far more difficult, many rural families discover they are surprisingly resilient compared to densely populated metropolitan centers.
Throughout history, humanity lived for thousands of years without electricity. Ancient civilizations built empires, crossed oceans, created magnificent architecture, and developed sophisticated cultures using little more than muscle power, fire, wind, and flowing water. The question isn't whether humans can survive without electricity. We already have. The real question is whether modern civilization can survive after becoming completely dependent upon it. Consider communication. Before electricity, news traveled at the speed of horses, ships, or messengers on foot. Today, we expect information to cross continents in milliseconds. Without electronic communication, governments struggle to coordinate emergency responses. Families become separated without knowing whether loved ones are safe. Rumors spread faster than verified facts, creating confusion that can sometimes be even more dangerous than the blackout itself. Food production also changes dramatically. Modern agriculture depends on GPS-guided tractors, automated irrigation systems, refrigeration, fertilizers, transportation networks, and massive processing facilities. Remove electricity, and farmers return to methods that require vastly more human labor while producing far less food. Feeding billions suddenly becomes one of humanity's greatest challenges. Yet something unexpected also begins to happen. Communities that rarely interacted before start working together. Neighbors share supplies, cook communal meals, exchange practical skills, and organize local security. In times of crisis, cooperation often proves stronger than fear. Throughout history, humans have repeatedly survived disasters, not because individuals were strongest, but because communities learn to depend on one another. Nights become almost unrecognizable. For the first time in generations, entire cities disappear beneath genuine darkness. Without artificial lighting drowning out the heavens, the stars return in breathtaking numbers. The Milky Way stretches overhead, visible even above former metropolitan skylines. It's a haunting reminder of what the night sky looked like for nearly every human who ever lived before the modern age. Transportation enters a new era almost overnight. Air travel ceases. High-speed rail systems stop operating. Modern shipping slows dramatically. Horses, bicycles, sailboats, and walking regain importance. Distances that once seemed trivial suddenly require days or even weeks to cross. Entire economies shrink as local production replaces global trade. Knowledge becomes one of humanity's most valuable resources. People who understand mechanics, farming, blacksmithing, carpentry, medicine, water purification, food preservation, and construction suddenly possess skills worth more than expensive degrees in fields dependent upon technology. Practical experience becomes a new form of wealth.
Scientists have long considered scenarios that could produce prolonged global blackouts. Massive solar storms, coordinated cyber attacks, cascading infrastructure failures, or large-scale electromagnetic events have all been studied as genuine risks. While each scenario differs dramatically, they all expose one uncomfortable reality. Our civilization relies upon an incredibly delicate electrical foundation. Months into the crisis, society begins transforming rather than simply collapsing. Local governments emerge where national communication has weakened. Markets return, using barter or locally trusted currencies. Workshops replace factories. Repair becomes more valuable than replacement. Humanity slowly adapts, proving once again that survival often depends on flexibility rather than comfort. Children born into this new world would grow up with entirely different expectations. Instead of tablets and streaming videos, evenings revolve around storytelling, music, books, craftsmanship, and shared experiences. Education shifts toward practical survival alongside traditional knowledge. Technology is remembered rather than taken for granted. Nature also begins reclaiming spaces humans once dominated. Without endless electric lighting, many nocturnal animals return to cities. Air pollution falls as industrial activity slows. Rivers gradually become cleaner. Some ecosystems begin recovering faster than scientists predicted. Humanity's absence from constant industrial activity leaves surprisingly visible marks upon the environment.
Eventually, engineers and survivors attempt something extraordinary, rebuilding electrical infrastructure from the ground up. Small hydroelectric systems appear near rivers. Windmills begin turning again. Communities experiment with simple renewable technologies that require fewer complex supply chains. Instead of enormous centralized grids, localized power systems become the foundation of recovery. Looking back, historians might describe this event not simply as the day electricity disappeared, but as the moment humanity rediscovered its resilience. Civilization would undoubtedly suffer unimaginable hardship. Millions of lives could be changed forever. Yet history repeatedly shows that humans possess an extraordinary ability to adapt, innovate, and rebuild after even the greatest catastrophes. After an entire year without electricity, humanity has settled into a strange new normal. The panic of the early days has faded into routine. Every sunrise marks the beginning of another day shaped entirely by daylight, weather, and physical labor. Time itself feels different. Without glowing screens demanding attention every minute, life slows to a rhythm that hasn't existed on a global scale for centuries. Cities, once celebrated as symbols of progress, now stand as monuments to dependence. Towering skyscrapers become nearly impossible to inhabit above the lower floors because elevators never return. Office buildings sit empty, their glass windows reflecting silent streets below. Nature slowly begins creeping into abandoned neighborhoods, with vines climbing walls and wildlife reclaiming parks, rooftops, and forgotten alleyways. Meanwhile, smaller towns begin flourishing in unexpected ways. Communities rediscover local craftsmanship. Blacksmiths, millers, carpenters, seamstresses, and farmers become some of the most respected people in society. Instead of ordering products from halfway around the world, people once again rely on the skills of those living just down the road. Local economies become stronger because they have no other choice. One of the greatest losses isn't material, it's informational. Humanity has stored unimaginable amounts of knowledge digitally. Family photographs, historical archives, scientific research, financial records, literature, music, and countless memories now sit trapped inside devices that cannot be powered. Libraries filled with physical books suddenly become priceless treasures.
preserving information that can still be accessed with nothing more than sunlight and patience.
Education transforms completely. Schools abandon digital classrooms and return to handwritten lessons, printed textbooks, practical apprenticeships, and face-to-face discussion. Children spend less time memorizing information that once lived online and more time learning how to grow food, repair tools, build shelters, preserve medicine, and solve problems without relying on machines.
Medicine faces one of its greatest tests. While many modern treatments become impossible without advanced equipment, centuries of medical knowledge still remain. Doctors increasingly depend on surgical skill, herbal remedies where appropriate, sterilization through heat, and careful diagnosis rather than computerized imaging. Survival often comes down to experience rather than technology.
Energy itself never disappears. It simply changes form. Flowing rivers power simple mills. Wind fills handcrafted sails. Fire once again becomes central to cooking, heating, and industry. Human and animal strength replace electric motors. People begin appreciating that energy has always surrounded us. Electricity simply allowed us to harness it with extraordinary efficiency. Governments also evolve. Without nationwide digital communication, local leadership becomes increasingly important. Small communities make decisions independently, adapting to their own environments rather than waiting for distant authorities. Some regions thrive through cooperation, while others struggle with conflict over resources. Human nature reveals both its greatest strengths and its darkest instincts. Trade slowly returns, but it looks nothing like the global economy that existed before. Merchant caravans, sailing ships, horse-drawn wagons, and regional markets reconnect neighboring communities. Goods become more expensive because every mile traveled requires real physical effort. Suddenly, repairing an old tool makes far more sense than replacing it with a new one.
One surprising change appears in people's mental health. Without constant notifications, endless news cycles, and social media algorithms competing for attention, many report feeling calmer despite living in a much harsher world. Conversations become longer. Families spend evenings together around fires. Entertainment, once again, depends on imagination rather than streaming services. Yet the hardships remain immense. Winters become deadly without reliable heating. Droughts threaten harvests that cannot rely on automated irrigation. Disease spreads more easily when sanitation systems fail. Every season brings new challenges that modern society had largely forgotten. Survival demands planning months ahead instead of simply visiting a store whenever supplies run low. Engineers become some of the world's most valuable people. Their mission is no longer designing faster smartphones or smarter software. Instead, they focus on rebuilding practical infrastructure using whatever materials remain. Water wheels, mechanical workshops, small foundries, and basic manufacturing slowly lay the foundation for a second industrial age, one built from the lessons of the first. Historians often remind us that civilizations rarely disappear overnight. More often, they transform. The Roman Empire faded over centuries. Ancient Egypt evolved through countless dynasties. Humanity has endured ice ages, plagues, volcanic winters, and world wars. Each catastrophe reshaped society, but none erased the human drive to adapt and move forward. If electricity eventually returned after years of darkness, the world that welcomed it back would be profoundly different. People would likely use technology more cautiously, recognizing how vulnerable complete dependence can make a civilization. Redundant systems, local food production, printed archives, and resilient infrastructure would no longer seem outdated. They would become essential safeguards against future disasters. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson hidden inside this thought experiment. Electricity is one of humanity's greatest achievements, allowing us to accomplish in seconds what once required months or even years. But our greatest strength has never been technology alone. It has always been curiosity, cooperation, resilience, and the ability to solve impossible problems together. Whether powered by fire, flowing water, steam, or electricity, those qualities have carried humanity through every challenge in history. And if the lights ever did go out forever, they may be the very things that help us find our way back into the light once again.
So, could humanity survive without electricity? The evidence suggests that humans almost certainly could. Our species survived for countless generations before the first power station ever existed. But modern civilization, with its interconnected networks, instant communication, and global supply chains, would face one of the greatest challenges in its history. Electricity hasn't merely made life easier, it has become the invisible foundation supporting nearly every system we depend upon. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't how fragile electricity is, but how fragile we become when we forget the remarkable skills, resilience, and cooperation that allowed humanity to thrive long before the first switch was ever flipped. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Sweet dreams, and thanks for watching on Sleep Time.